There is a moment that arrives quietly in the lives of most people after a certain age. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself with pain or alarm. It is simply a small observation, repeated over time, that something has shifted in how others respond to you. A grandchild who once climbed into your lap without hesitation now chooses the seat across the room. A grown child, during a visit, gently opens a window that was closed. A friend at a gathering seems to stand just a fraction farther away than they once did. These moments are easy to dismiss, easy to explain away as imagination or oversensitivity. But when they accumulate, they raise a question that few people ever voice aloud. What has changed? The answer, as it turns out, has nothing to do with who you are or how well you care for yourself. It has everything to do with the quiet, predictable science of how the human body evolves across the decades. And once you understand it, the response is not shame or resignation, but something far more useful: clarity. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging, the architecture of living well, understanding the body's natural rhythms across the decades. There is a question that arrives quietly, often in the late afternoon of life, when the pace of days has shifted and the body speaks in a different language than it once did. The question is not dramatic. It does not announce itself with urgency. It simply lingers in the background of ordinary moments. Why does some discomfort persist despite doing everything right? Why does energy seem to fade earlier in the day? Why do certain small pleasures no longer feel quite the same? These are not signs of failure. They are not evidence that something has gone wrong. They are simply indications that the body's systems, after decades of reliable service, have begun to operate according to a different set of rules. The machinery that once ran on youthful momentum now requires a more thoughtful approach, one that works with the body's changing rhythms rather than against them. The study of how human beings age has revealed something both surprising and comforting. Many of the changes that accompany growing older are not random breakdowns, but predictable shifts in how the body manages energy, repairs itself, and responds to the environment. Understanding these shifts does not require a medical degree or a laboratory. It requires only a willingness to observe, to adjust, and to recognize that the body at 70 is not the body at 30, nor should it be. This is an exploration of those changes, not through the lens of disease or decline, but through the architecture of healthy function. What follows is a calm examination of how the body's systems naturally evolve, what that evolution means for daily life, and how small, consistent adjustments can support comfort and vitality across the decades. The body's changing landscape. Every human body is engaged in continuous work, much of it invisible. Cells divide and replace themselves. Tissues repair minor damage. Glands secrete precisely measured amounts of hormones. Nerves transmit signals at speeds that would astonish anyone who paused to consider them. This work goes on without conscious effort, day and night, year after year. What changes with time is not the willingness of these systems to perform their tasks, but their efficiency and their priorities. A body in its 20s prioritizes growth, reproduction, and high-output energy use. A body in its 60s and beyond prioritizes maintenance, conservation, and protection. This is not a design flaw. It is a design feature, one that has allowed human beings to live long beyond their reproductive years, contributing knowledge, resources, and care to their communities. The skin, that visible boundary between self and world, illustrates this shift clearly. In youth, the skin produces oil abundantly, sometimes too abundantly, leading to the blemishes that trouble adolescents and young adults. This oil, called sebum, keeps the skin flexible and protected. It creates a barrier against microorganisms and environmental irritants. It helps maintain the slight acidity that discourages unwanted bacterial growth. With time, the composition of this oil changes. The glands that produce it become less active in some ways and more active in others. The oil itself becomes thicker, more prone to oxidation when exposed to air and light. This oxidation produces compounds that were not present in significant amounts during younger years. These compounds have a distinct quality. They are not unpleasant in the way that sweat can be unpleasant. They are softer, muskier, more persistent. They cling to fabrics and linger in rooms. This is not a sign of poor hygiene or neglect. It is simply the skin doing what skin does, but according to a different chemical formula. The same process that keeps the skin intact and protected in later years also produces this byproduct. Understanding this distinction matters because it shifts the response from shame or frustration to simple management. The body is not failing. It is simply operating differently. The sweat glands tell a similar story. Throughout most of adult life, sweating serves two primary purposes. It cools the body through evaporation, and it carries waste products to the surface where they can be washed away. Every drop of sweat contains not just water, but small amounts of urea, salts, and metabolic byproducts that the body needs to eliminate. After a certain point, usually around the sixth decade, sweat production declines. The glands remain, but they become less responsive to signals from the nervous system. This reduction might seem like a convenience. Less sweat means less dampness, less need for frequent changes of clothing. But the waste products that sweat once carried away do not simply disappear. They accumulate on the skin surface, where bacteria, which are always present, break them down. The byproducts of this bacterial activity contribute to the overall scent profile of the skin. Again, this is not a problem to be solved with stronger soaps or more aggressive scrubbing. Those approaches often make things worse by stripping away the protective oils that keep skin healthy. It is simply a reality to be acknowledged and worked with, using methods that support the skin rather than attacking it. The mouth undergoes its own transformation. Saliva, which most people never think about until it becomes scarce, is one of the body's most sophisticated cleaning fluids. It contains enzymes that begin digesting food. It washes away bacteria and food particles. It maintains the pH balance that keeps oral tissues healthy. It even contains compounds that fight infection. With age, saliva production often decreases. This can happen gradually, so slowly that the change is barely noticeable until it becomes significant. The mouth feels drier. Food sticks to the teeth more. Breath may become less fresh even with diligent brushing. Medications, particularly those for blood pressure, diabetes, and mood disorders, can accelerate this drying effect. The result is an environment where bacteria thrive more readily than they once did. The mouth, like the skin, is always home to bacteria. That is normal and healthy. But when saliva flow diminishes, bacterial populations shift and multiply. The compounds they produce contribute to the overall impression others may notice. These three systems, skin oil, sweat, and saliva, operate independently, but their effects combine. They create a total body environment that is different in later years than it was in earlier ones. Recognizing this allows for responses that are targeted and effective rather than scattershot and frustrating. The principle of gentle support. There is a tendency, when faced with bodily changes, to respond with force. Stronger soap, harsher scrubbing, more aggressive cleaning products. This approach reflects a misunderstanding of how the body works. The body is not an enemy to be conquered or a problem to be solved. It is a living system that responds best to gentle, consistent support. Consider what happens when skin is stripped of its natural oils. The immediate result is a feeling of cleanliness. often accompanied by tightness or slight dryness. This sensation is sometimes interpreted as proof that the cleaning worked. In fact, it is evidence that the skin's protective barrier has been compromised. When that barrier is damaged, the skin must work harder to restore it, drawing resources away from other functions. The skin may become drier over time as it struggles to maintain moisture. Dry skin cracks microscopically, creating pathways for bacteria to enter. The cycle worsens. The alternative is to work with the skin's natural processes. Warm water, not hot, opens pores and loosens debris without stripping oils. Gentle cleansing, focused on areas where sweat and oil accumulate most, removes what needs to be removed while leaving the protective barrier intact. Thorough drying, especially in skin folds, prevents the moisture that encourages bacterial growth. These are not aggressive measures. They are cooperative ones. The same principle applies to hydration. Drinking water is such a simple recommendation that it is easy to dismiss. Everyone has heard it countless times. But the reason it bears repeating is that the body's thirst signal becomes less reliable with age. The mechanisms that once prompted a person to seek water become muted. It is possible to be mildly dehydrated for years without ever feeling thirsty. Mild dehydration has effects throughout the body. The blood becomes slightly thicker, making the heart work harder to circulate it. The kidneys, which filter waste from the blood, must concentrate urine more heavily, putting strain on those organs. The skin, already producing less oil and sweat, becomes drier still. Waste products that would normally be eliminated through urine find other routes, including the skin. Water alone does not solve every problem, but it creates the conditions under which other solutions can work. It thins the blood, eases the kidneys' work, and supports the skin's natural functions. It is the foundation upon which other practices are built. Movement as communication. The body interprets movement as instruction. Every time a person stands up, walks across a room, reaches for an object on a high shelf, or bends to tie a shoe, the nervous system receives information. This information shapes how the body allocates resources, which systems it prioritizes, and what it prepares for. When movement is frequent and varied, the body receives a consistent message. Mobility matters. Resources flow toward muscle maintenance, joint lubrication, and balance systems. The bones, responding to the slight stress of weight-bearing movement, maintain their density more effectively. The heart, called upon to increase output during activity, retains its adaptability. When movement is limited, the body receives a different message. It interprets prolonged stillness as a signal that high levels of muscle and bone are unnecessary. It begins to dismantle what it is not using. Muscle mass decreases gradually at first, then more noticeably. Joints stiffen from lack of use. Balance, that complex system involving the inner ear, vision, and proprioception, becomes less reliable. This is not a moral failing or a lack of discipline. It is simply the body's efficient response to the information it receives. If a muscle is not used, maintaining it requires energy that could be directed elsewhere. The body, always practical, redirects that energy. The kind of movement that matters most is not dramatic. It does not require special equipment or athletic ability. It requires only regularity. Walking, that most basic of human movements, provides stimulation to nearly every system. The legs pump blood back toward the heart, assisting circulation. The arms swing in opposition to the legs, maintaining the cross-body coordination patterns that keep the nervous system integrated. The eyes scan the environment, keeping the visual system engaged. The inner ear registers the gentle shifts in position, maintaining its calibration. Even for those whose mobility is limited, movement remains possible and valuable. Arm movements while seated, gentle stretching of the feet and ankles, small rotations of the neck and shoulders. The body responds to whatever movement it is offered, proportionally to the effort. The timing of movement matters as well. The body's natural rhythms include periods of higher and lower energy throughout the day. For many people, the morning hours offer the best opportunity for movement. The body is rested, the mind is clear, and the day's demands have not yet accumulated. Afternoon brings a natural dip in energy for many, a remnant of ancient patterns when afternoon was a time for rest in the shade. Evening movement should be gentler, allowing the body to prepare for sleep rather than stimulating it into alertness. Working with these rhythms, rather than against them, makes movement feel less like an obligation and more like a natural part of the day's flow. A morning walk, an afternoon stretch, an evening of gentle movement around the house. These small investments accumulate into significant effects over time. The internal environment, what enters the body becomes, for a time, part of the body. Food is broken down into its components, and those components are used to build cells, fuel activity, and repair damage. The quality of those components influences the quality of the work the body can do. This is not about strict rules or forbidden foods. It is about understanding that the body has preferences, and those preferences shift with age. A younger body can often handle wide variations in food quality, compensating for poor choices with robust repair systems. An older body, with those same repair systems operating at reduced capacity, is more affected by what it receives. The compounds called antioxidants illustrate this principle. They are not magical substances. They are simply molecules that can donate electrons to unstable molecules called free radicals without becoming unstable themselves. This stabilizing effect matters because free radicals, when unchecked, can damage cell membranes, proteins, and even DNA. Younger bodies produce antioxidants abundantly and recycle them efficiently. Older bodies produce fewer and recycle them less effectively. The gap between free radical production and antioxidant availability widens. This gap is associated with many of the changes that accompany aging, including the oxidation of skin oils that produces certain compounds. Foods rich in antioxidants provide the body with materials it can use to narrow this gap. Brightly colored fruits and vegetables, deeply pigmented berries, leafy greens, and certain spices all contain these compounds in varying amounts. The body takes what it needs from what is offered. Water-rich foods serve a different but equally important function. Cucumbers, melons, tomatoes, and leafy greens contain water that is absorbed slowly, accompanied by the minerals that help the body use it effectively. This form of hydration complements drinking water, spreading fluid intake throughout the day rather than concentrating it in a few moments. Fiber, found in whole grains, beans, vegetables, and fruits, supports the digestive system in ways that affect the whole body. The digestive tract is not merely a passage for food. It is an active organ system with its own immune functions, its own nervous system, and its own relationship with the community of microorganisms that live within it. When digestion slows, as it often does with age, waste products can remain in the body longer than optimal. Fiber helps maintain regular elimination, reducing the time that waste spends in contact with the body. The relationship between food and body odor is sometimes surprising. Certain foods, like garlic, have strong scents that temporarily affect breath and skin. But these same foods contain compounds that, over time, support the body's antimicrobial defenses. The short-term effect may be noticeable, but the long-term effect may be beneficial. This is a reminder that the body's responses are complex and cannot always be reduced to simple rules. The fabric environment. Human beings are not separate from their environments. They are in constant exchange with them, breathing the air, touching the surfaces, wearing the fabrics that surround them. These exchanges work in both directions. The body affects its environment, and the environment affects the body. Fabrics illustrate this exchange clearly. Clothing, sheets, and towels absorb whatever the body releases. Skin oils transfer to pillowcases. Sweat soaks into shirt collars and underarms. Dead skin cells, constantly shed, accumulate in bedding. These materials, once absorbed, do not simply disappear. They remain in the fabric, where they can be broken down by the same bacteria that live on skin. This is why fresh clothing and clean bedding matter beyond their appearance. They represent a reset, a removal of the accumulated material that has transferred from body to fabric. Wearing the same shirt multiple days in a row means spending the second day in fabric that already contains yesterday's oils and sweat. Sleeping on the same sheets for weeks means spending a third of each day in contact with the accumulated material of many nights. Cotton and other natural fibers breathe more effectively than synthetics. They allow air to circulate, moisture to evaporate, and heat to dissipate. They also wash more thoroughly, releasing trapped material into the wash water rather than holding it through multiple cycles. Drying in sunlight, when possible, adds another layer of freshness. Sunlight contains ultraviolet radiation that kills bacteria naturally, without chemicals. The scent of sun-dried laundry is not merely pleasant. It is the scent of fabric that has been sanitized by the same light that sustains life outdoors. Footwear requires particular attention. Feet contain more sweat glands per square inch than any other part of the body. They are enclosed in shoes for much of the day, creating a warm, moist environment where bacteria thrive. Rotating between 2 or 3 pairs of shoes allows each pair to dry completely between wearings. This simple practice dramatically reduces the accumulation of material in shoes. Socks should be changed daily without exception. Natural fiber socks, wool or cotton, manage moisture more effectively than synthetics. They allow sweat to move away from the skin rather than holding it against the feet. The air that surrounds. Indoor air quality receives far less attention than it deserves, given how much time most people spend indoors. The air in a closed room is not static. It is continuously modified by everything in that room. The occupants, their activities, the furnishings, the building materials. When windows remain closed for extended periods, the compounds released by human bodies accumulate. These compounds include the same substances that transfer to fabrics, now floating in the air or settled on surfaces. They include cooking odors from meals past. They include the off-gassing of furniture, carpets, and cleaning products. Opening windows, even briefly, exchanges this accumulated air for fresh. The effect is immediate and noticeable. The room smells lighter, cleaner, more alive. This is not imagination. It is the physical replacement of indoor air with outdoor air, carrying with it the dilution of everything that had accumulated. The timing of ventilation matters less than the regularity. Morning and evening offer natural opportunities, when the day is beginning or winding down. Even 10 minutes of open windows makes a difference. In colder climates, a shorter burst of ventilation, with interior doors closed to contain warmth, provides the benefits without excessive heat loss. Bathrooms and kitchens benefit from extra attention. These rooms generate moisture and food particles that can linger if not exhausted. Ventilation fans, when available, should be used during and after activities that generate steam or cooking odors. The rhythm of rest. Sleep is not merely the absence of waking. It is an active state, during which the body performs essential maintenance that cannot be accomplished during the day. Tissues are repaired. Memories are consolidated. Waste products are cleared from the brain. Hormones are balanced. With age, sleep patterns naturally shift. Sleep becomes lighter, more easily interrupted. The deep stages of sleep, during which the most intensive repair work occurs, may shorten. Waking during the night becomes more common. These changes are normal, but they require accommodation. The environment for sleep matters more as sleep becomes more fragile. A cool room supports the natural drop in body temperature that accompanies sleep onset. Darkness signals the brain to produce melatonin, the hormone that regulates sleep-wake cycles. Quiet allows the brain to remain in sleep rather than being roused to alertness. The consistency of sleep timing also matters. The body's internal clock, the circadian rhythm, relies on regularity to maintain its function. Going to bed and waking at roughly the same times each day reinforces this rhythm, making sleep more accessible when it is wanted. Evening routines should wind down rather than wind up. Bright light, particularly the blue light from screens, signals the brain that it is still daytime. Vigorous activity raises body temperature and heart rate, delaying the natural preparation for sleep. Heavy meals late in the evening require digestive work during the night. A gradual transition from the activity of the day to the stillness of night supports the body's shift into sleep mode. The social connection. Human beings evolved in groups, not in isolation. The nervous system developed in contexts where other humans were always present, where touch was frequent, where voices and faces provided constant feedback. This evolutionary history has left modern humans with nervous systems that expect connection. Social engagement influences physiology in measurable ways. Heart rate and blood pressure respond to the presence of trusted others. Stress hormone levels decrease during positive social interactions. Pain perception is modulated by social support. The immune system functions differently in socially connected individuals compared to isolated ones. Physical touch, in particular, carries significance beyond its surface effects. A hand on the shoulder, an arm around the waist, a grandchild's hug. These are not merely gestures. They are communications between nervous systems, signals that say, directly and without words, that the person is seen, valued, and safe. When these connections diminish, whether through circumstance or through the subtle barriers that can arise with age, the nervous system registers the loss. It is not dramatic, not something most people would name as a cause of discomfort, but the effects accumulate. Maintaining connection requires intention. It means reaching out when it would be easier to wait for others to reach out. It means accepting invitations even when the effort of going out feels daunting. It means finding ways to contribute, to be useful, to matter to others. These efforts support not only emotional well-being, but physiological function. For those whose mobility or circumstances limit in-person connection, other forms of contact provide some of the same benefits. Telephone calls carry voice tones that convey meaning beyond words. Written messages, even brief ones, maintain the thread of relationship. The specific medium matters less than the consistent practice of reaching out. The attitude of acceptance. There is a particular form of suffering that comes from fighting what cannot be changed. The body will age. Its capacities will shift. Some things that were once easy will become difficult, and some things that were once possible will become impossible. These facts are not negotiable. What is negotiable is the response to them. Resistance. The constant wishing that things were different. The endless comparison to how things used to be. This creates suffering on top of the natural changes. It adds a layer of emotional distress to physical reality. Acceptance is not the same as giving up. It is not resignation or passivity. It is clear-eyed recognition of what is, combined with practical action toward what can be improved. Acceptance says, this is the body I have today. These are its capacities today. Now, within that reality, what can I do to support it, to comfort it, to work with it rather than against it? This attitude has physiological effects of its own. Chronic stress, the kind that comes from continuous resistance to reality, elevates cortisol and other stress hormones. These hormones, useful for short-term challenges, become harmful when sustained over long periods. They suppress immune function, increase inflammation, and accelerate the very aging processes they are meant to help the body survive. Acceptance reduces this stress load. It does not eliminate challenges, but it removes the layer of self-generated distress that makes challenges harder to bear. It frees energy for practical action rather than wasting it on wishing. The integration of practices. The approaches described here do not operate in isolation. They work together, each supporting the others, creating conditions that make all of them more effective. Hydration supports the skin, making it more resilient to the gentle cleansing that removes accumulated oils. Movement circulates blood, delivering nutrients to tissues and carrying away waste. Good food provides the materials the body needs for repair. Clean fabrics and fresh air reduce the load of compounds the body must manage. Social connection supports the nervous system's regulation. Rest allows all systems to perform their nightly maintenance. Acceptance reduces the stress that undermines all other efforts. This integration means that small efforts multiply. Improving hydration makes movement more comfortable. Movement improves sleep. Good sleep supports the immune system. A stronger immune system reduces inflammation. Less inflammation means the skin functions better. The whole system lifts together, not because of any single intervention, but because of the way all the parts support each other. The reverse is also true. Neglecting one area creates stress in others. Poor hydration makes movement harder. Lack of movement disrupts sleep. Poor sleep increases stress. Stress affects food choices. The system can spiral downward as readily as it can spiral upward. This is not a reason for anxiety, but for gentleness. It means that any positive change, no matter how small, has effects that ripple through the whole system. A single glass of water, a short walk, one window opened. These are not insignificant gestures. They are seeds that, planted consistently, grow into patterns that support the whole person. The long view. Human life is long by any measure. Longer than that of almost any other mammal. Longer than our ancestors could have imagined. This length brings gifts that shorter lives cannot offer. Perspective. Depth. The accumulation of experience into wisdom. It also brings challenges that shorter lives never encounter. Systems that must be maintained for decades beyond their original design specifications. The body that carries a person through 8 or 9 decades is not the same body that carried them through the first 2. It has been modified by time, by use, by the countless small events that make up a life. It has scars and stories. It has learned what it knows through repetition and experience. It has preferences now that it did not have when it was new. Working with this body, understanding its language, responding to its needs. This is not a project with a finish line. It is an ongoing relationship, one that deepens over time. The person who learns to listen to their body, to notice what supports it and what strains it, develops a kind of wisdom that cannot be gained any other way. This wisdom is not about avoiding all difficulty or maintaining perfect function. It is about knowing what matters, what can be influenced, and what must be accepted. It is about distinguishing between the changes that signal a need for attention and the changes that are simply part of the journey. It is about finding, within the limits that time imposes, the fullest possible expression of life. The practices described here are tools for this work. They are not rules to be followed rigidly or standards against which to measure failure. They are simply approaches that many people have found useful, ways of working with the body that support its natural functions rather than fighting against them. Some days, all of them will be possible. Other days, none of them will be. The relationship is long, and it accommodates both. What matters is not perfection, but persistence. Not doing everything right, but continuing to show up. To pay attention. To offer what can be offered. The quiet continuity. There is a certain hour in the late afternoon when the light changes, becoming softer, longer, more golden than it was at midday. This light does not signal failure or decline. It is simply the light of that hour, with its own qualities, its own beauty, its own contribution to the day's wholeness. The body in its later decades is like that light. It is different from what came before, but it is not less. It has its own qualities, its own contributions, its own place in the wholeness of a life. The person who can see it this way, who can meet it with curiosity rather than fear, with acceptance rather than resistance, with gentle care rather than harsh judgment, that person has found something valuable. The body will continue to change, as all living things do. The practices that support it today may need adjustment tomorrow. The relationship is never finished, never finally solved. It is always in process, always requiring attention, always offering the opportunity to learn something new. This is not a burden. It is simply what it means to be alive, to be in a body that moves through time, to be part of the great slow river of life that carries everything forward. The task is not to stop the river, but to learn to swim in it, to find the currents that support forward movement, to rest in the eddies when rest is needed, to keep breathing, keep moving, keep participating in the only life there is. The body, with all its changes, with all its new requirements and limitations, is still the body. It is still the vehicle through which experience happens, through which love is expressed, through which the world is encountered. Caring for it, gently, consistently, without drama or desperation, is not a chore. It is a continuation of the same care that has sustained life from the beginning, adapted now to new circumstances, new needs, new possibilities, and that continuity, that quiet ongoingness of attention and care, is perhaps the most important practice of all. It does not guarantee perfect health or unlimited years. Nothing does. But it ensures that whatever years remain are lived in cooperation with the body rather than in opposition to it. It ensures that the relationship, that most intimate of all relationships, remains one of respect and kindness until the very end. The body you inhabit today is not the same body that carried you through your 30s or 40s, and it was never meant to be. It has been shaped by decades of experience, by the quiet accumulation of small moments, by the natural and inevitable evolution of systems that were designed not for permanence, but for adaptation. The single most important truth to carry forward is this: the changes that arrive with time are not failures to be hidden, but realities to be understood. And understanding, as it always does, transforms what feels like a burden into something manageable, even graceful. If this exploration has prompted thoughts or reflections you would like to share, the comments below offer a space for that conversation. And if the approach of this library speaks to you, there are other recordings here, other explorations of what it means to live well across all the seasons of life. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.